Happy Father's Day. You know, we're talking about influence, and I thought what better subject to talk about today than the influence of fathers. I heard a great definition, Dad, you'll appreciate this. A definition of fathers is a man who carries pitchers where his money used to be. Right? We're talking about influence, and the base verse or the scriptures that we've been looking at as a basis for this series is found in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 13, where Jesus said these words. He said, "You're the salt of the earth." He goes on to say, "You're like a light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden." And what we're talking about in the series is basically this one thing, is our calling as Christ followers is to influence the world around us. Just to make a difference, just to be salt and to be light. And I believe one of the greatest influences on this planet today is the influence of a father. Becoming an influential father. And that's what I want to talk to you about for just a few minutes this morning. And I always feel a little intimidated when I start talking about fatherhood and things like that, because there's so many other fathers that I think could get up here and do a much better job than I could on talking about what it means to be a father. What does it take to be an influential father? Though I feel inadequate at times on this, and I could tell you more mistakes that I've made than probably more things that I have done right. But I believe with all my heart, there's no subject that is more exciting to me than to talk about what it means to be a father and becoming a person of influence in a child's life. So what do we mean by becoming an influential father? You know, I think anybody can be a father, but not everybody could be a dad, if that makes sense. That not everybody can be a dad. Fathers are a dime a dozen. Fathers, but real true fathers and dads are few, and they're far between. You know, I think typically fathers, we see ourselves often in this stereotype of that we're the ones who bring home the bacon, so to speak. We bring home the money, and we meet the physical and material needs of our family, but we have very little hands-on involvement and influence in the lives and the shaping of our children. And often, not everyone, but often, dads often defer to moms in that area. Well, you raise the children, and I'll make sure you got the money and the things that you need to raise them and do it right. Too many fathers measure themselves by their parental performance and how well they're able to meet the needs and supply the needs of their kids, and those are important. But we often measure our effectiveness by how many toys we can get them, how many gadgets we can provide, what kind of clothes they wear, what kind of car they drive, what home they live in, the kind of food they eat, how exclusive a school they can get into, or groups or teams or sororities or fraternities or whatever that we can send them to. We often judge ourselves on how big of an estate, how big of an inheritance that we can leave our kids. But these are secondary. They're not primary. They're not unimportant, but they're not all important. So if what many fathers are giving their kids are of secondary importance, and it's not all important, what's the greatest influence a father can have on his family and on his kids? I want to just give you three things this morning, and these are three that I believe in, three that I work hard at. I don't always succeed in these things. But these are three things that I feel are key to being an influential dad or an influential father. And the first and foremost is that you've got to be you play a part, you influence your kids' spiritual formation. You shape your kids' spiritual formation. Please hear this, okay? This is not the church's responsibility. It's not, we bring them to church and go, okay, now you shape them spiritually. It's not our responsibility. It's the responsibility of dad and mom and in the home. In fact, in Deuteronomy, I love the way that it was stated. He said, and you must think constantly about these commands I'm giving you today. And I just want you to focus on a few key words as we go through these scriptures. He said, who? You can talk, okay? And who? you. Not the church, not the school, no one. He said, and you, parents, you, fathers. And you must think constantly about these commands I'm giving you today. And you must constantly, okay. Tell you what, I'm going to let y'all do this. Y'all do a much better job than I do. Let me just read it to you. And you must think constantly about these commands I'm giving you today. You, here we are again. You must teach them to your children and talk about them when you are at home or out for a walk, at bedtime and the first thing in the morning. Tie them on your finger. Wear them on your forehead and write them on the doorpost of your house. You kind of get the idea of who he's putting the responsibility on. He said, for the spiritual formation of your kids, he said, it's you. It's you. This can't be left to chance, okay? It cannot be left for them to, I want them to discover it on their own. We can't do that. It's too critical. It's too important. Their spiritual formation. We ought to be consumed with a passion for living and laying this foundation in their life. He said, give your kids, you can give them religion, you can give them tradition, or you can give them a spiritual formation that will serve them well for the rest of their life. It's not just about bringing them to church. It's not just about sending them to church, and you should do those things. Knock yourself out day and night, he said, to convince your kids that they ought to love God and that they can trust God and turn their cares and their life over to Him. He said, don't just pray at dinner and just let that be our religious experience at home, but develop a relationship with God and share that with your kids. It's harder now for kids than ever before because there's fewer good role models out there. I don't know if you watch much TV, but the role models that I see often today portrayed in the media and social media and in the news, it's often horrifying to see the role models that are put out there for kids to say, here's what you need to model your life after. Teach them. He said, teach them and lead them to Jesus and show them how to follow Him. My dad's greatest influence in my life was my spiritual formation. He didn't just tell me about religion. He didn't just say, you're going to church, which he did. In our house, you had two choices. You could go to church willingly or you could go to church unwillingly. So we were in church all the time. And he formed and gave me a spiritual foundation. He not only told me about Jesus, he showed me how to love and to serve Jesus with passion and with purpose. And I'm limited in what I can give my daughter in worldly possessions and worldly treasures, but I'm unlimited in what I can give her that really counts. I can give her something that will outweigh her life. It will outweigh anything else that's eternal. My dad, he gave me an example to follow, and he made it practical for me. There's a picture up here. I found this going through some old pictures, and I saw my daughter wearing a pair of my old dress shoes. And probably like your kids, they walk around with mom's shoes or dad's shoes, and they're clumsy looking and stumble and falling everywhere. And they walk around in our shoes. But the question came to me as I saw this picture. I thought, first of all, how cute, how grown she is now. But I thought, if she really does walk in my shoes, where are those shoes going to take her? If she really does follow in my steps, where will those steps take her? That's a good question, isn't it? Where will your shoes take your kids? We take our cues, or our kids take our cues from us, like it or not. They watch us. The values in our home, they're always caught quicker than they're taught. Dads, if we have any desire for our kids to know and follow and trust Jesus Christ, dads, we need to be the ones. We need to start that ball rolling. Never underestimate your influence in the life of your children. It can't be delegated to mom. It can't be pushed off on the church, and it's not the responsibility of the school. We must model that. When they know that work is more important than worship, and pleasure is more important than purity, and public opinion is the standard rather than God's standards, we're more excited about material things and spiritual things and more concerned about what other people think than what God thinks. We need to step back, because we're on a stage and our kids are the audience and they're watching us. Every purchase, every conversation, every fit of rage, every relationship, every activity. By us living it out daily, we'll not only have a tremendous influence on their lives, but also on their spiritual formations. And listen, hey dads, listen, the last thing I want to do on Father's Day is get up here and say stuff that you're going to walk out and go, man, oh geez. No, listen to me. We're not perfect. There's not a perfect father in this room, me being the top imperfect one, okay? None of us are perfect. But we just simply strive to be real and strive to do what's right and strive to model consistency for our kids. If we're to influence our kids, we not only have to model it, we have to teach it. You know, we teach them a lot of things, don't we? We teach them how to throw the ball. We teach them how to ride a bike. We teach them, teach them how to swim. We teach them all these different things as they're growing up. And it's no different when it comes to a spiritual foundation and formation in their life. It's just simply something we have to teach them. So first of all, influential dads, they set a spiritual foundation. They influence a spiritual foundation for their kids. The second thing is that we help our kids and influence our kids to develop a healthy self-esteem. Some excel in the teaching and the spiritual foundation part, but we fail often in this building their self-esteem because kids question their value all the time. They question their worth early in life. When you stop and think about it, they're the objects often of cruel jokes, of bullying, which is on the rise now, and then there's the media ads which basically tell them, hey, you're not okay unless you have this, or you purchase this, or you wear this, or you drive this, or you become this. There's a lot going against them, and our greatest weapon against this attack, I believe, is two things. The first one is affirmation, and the second one is just encouragement. Affirmation and encouragement. The Scripture says that the power of life and death is in our tongues. We'll eventually believe what we repeatedly hear over and over again. Now, when it comes to affirmation and encouragement, don't fear overdoing it, okay? Don't think, well, I just don't want to do too much. Listen, you can't do too much when it comes to encouragement and affirmation. Don't withhold any of it. A simple practice that I've had for many years now is almost every week I will sit down and write a card to my daughter. And it's almost kind of got comical at times because she has this stack of cards at her apartment. But she'll always say, I'll call her, I'll say, hey, have you checked the mail this week? Oh, no, Dad, but I'll get it. And then I get a text or a phone call or something, I got your card. And it was so simple. It's so easy because all you do, you just write and you just say, hey, I'm proud of you. Hey, I'm thinking of you today. Hey, I love you. Hey, you're doing a great job. Hey, and just encourage and affirm them. It goes a long way in influencing their life and building a healthy self-esteem. Let them know you're proud of them. Colossians 3:21, he said, fathers, don't provoke your children lest they become discouraged. Another translation says, fathers, don't hassle your kids. And all the kids went, amen. It's terrible to be in a family where the only things the parents notice are bad things. So let me give you a project this week. Instead of looking for your kids and going, you shouldn't have done that. I knew you were going to do that. Hey, you need to, instead of looking for something bad, take this next week and look for something good. Catch them in doing it, and then affirm them and encourage them. Hey, that was really great. I'm so proud of you. Hey, you put your plate up and you put the stuff back in. Hey, I'm so proud of you, and just affirm and encourage them in what they're doing. Third thing, and the last one, is influential dads. They influence their child's understanding of love. Influence their child's understanding of love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. I love this. It's quoted often. But Paul said these three, he's talked about love in the chapter earlier in the chapter, and he gets to this last verse, and he says, these three remain: faith, hope, and love. Those are three great things. I'm going to tell you, we all need faith, we all need some hope, and certainly we all want love. But he didn't just stop there and said, these three things remain. These are the three greatest things. He goes on, he says, but the greatest of the three is love. Love. And love is best taught by example. I love a quote by Theodore Hesperer. He said, the most important thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. Society has a lot of definitions of love. There's a lot of definitions out there. There's a lot of views on what love really is. It's proclaimed in the media, it's proclaimed in ads and books and all kind of places. But I want to give you a very simple definition of love this morning, something that you can take and use. And it's simply this, that love is spelled Time. Time. Spending time. That's what Deuteronomy 6, the passage we just read at the beginning, that's what that was all about. He said, you teach your kids this. And he said, you teach about it when they wake up. And he said, teach them about it when you sit down at meals. And teach them about it when you're out and running about and doing walks and running errands. And teach them about it when you go to bed. What was he saying? He was saying, hey, it's all about making huge investments of time. Time. Robert Schuller, he was the founder of Crystal Cathedral. Some of you may remember him. Huge glass cathedral out in California. He used to have a television show that come on every Sunday morning, Hour of Power. And he was talked to and interviewed about this one time about fatherhood. And he once said that he chose to fail so he could succeed. He said, I chose to fail at golf because I wanted to succeed as a father. And though he loved golf immensely, he knew that he could never devote adequate time to his job, his hobby, and his family. So he gave up his hobby. Several years back, Tom Block, the CEO of H&R Block, it was then, the company was then worth $1.7 billion. He became a teacher at St. Francis Xavier Middle School in Kansas City, Missouri. His annual salary dropped to less than $15,000 a year, about 3% of his old salary. But Block knew his hectic schedule as a CEO had been interfering with his top priority, and that was his wife and their 2 sons. The hardest part of telling my father, he said, was letting him know that I was stepping down as CEO and going to take a job as a school teacher. I didn't want to look back on my life, he said, and say, gee, I had the opportunity to play a bigger role in our children's lives and didn't take it. Those are the stories of influential dads. They make large investments of time and have a proper understanding of love. Fatherhood is joyful, but it's often a long and scary and terrorizing process. Art Linkletter, he used to have a television show, and the people would write in, and a child wrote in. He told about a child writing into the president, and he said, Dear Mr. President, I'd like you to send children to Mars and the next spaceship going in that direction, and I would appreciate it very much if I could go. And the letter was signed, one of your future voters, Mitchell. The parents saw his letter, and they put their own little note in the envelope before it was mailed. And the parent said, Dear Mr. President, as parents of Mitchell Miller, we'd like to give you permission to send Mitchell anywhere in space you want to send him. Fatherhood can be a challenge at times, can it? being an influential dad. It's not easy. It takes large investments of time, patience, love. It's a journey and it's a marathon. And we need dads who are committed for the long haul. To say, hey, we're going to consistently just keep chipping away at this. One of the greatest influences I can have as a father is giving of my time and attention. And we start influencing the lives of our children in these simple ways. It not only will benefit them and serve them well for years to come, but it's going to benefit us as well. And I think maybe that's what the psalmist had in mind when he said, unless the Lord builds the house, the workers of the builder is wasted. Children are a gift from the Lord, and they are a reward from Him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in the warrior's hands, and how joyful is the man whose quiver is full. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his enemies, the city gates. My greatest priorities as a father is to develop a relationship with Jesus Christ, to know Him better every day, to love and to serve my wife, and to honor her. And then it's to love and to influence the life of my daughter so that she'll naturally come to a place that she has her own relationship with God, which she does. And hopefully this cycle will continue on and on and on. Being a dad doesn't last forever, so enjoy it now. I don't think I've ever heard of a dad who at the end of his life said, oh, gee, man, I wished I had spent more time on the golf course, or I wished I'd have had more money in the bank when I died. I love this little line, and we'll wrap up with this little quote. A dad is a man who feels and shares and cries, who laughs and wrestles and hopes. He's a man who listens even when he doesn't understand. He's a man who loves even when he feels weary. He stops doing what he thinks is important to do something else that may be even more important. A dad is a man who is honest enough to realize that his responsibilities must determine his priorities. So today we honor you, Dad, and we pray for you, Dad. Father,